The state of Colorado has a diverse geography that people have called home and thrived in for thousands of years. Before settlers from areas outside of Colorado arrived, there were tribes that called Colorado home for an unknown amount of time. But the earliest people arrived between 1 to 2,000 years ago. The first known tribe to permanently reside in what is now Colorado were the Ute people. These people were nomadic hunters and gatherers, but resided in the mountainous regions of Colorado. Due to the vastness of the region, they found that they could be more successful by splitting up in bands. The men would hunt big game, never for sport, and utilize every part of the animal's body. The woman would typically gather food, trap smaller game, and craft useful things such as quilts. Aside from the Ute people, there were other tribes that called Colorado home, such as the Arapaho. Unlike the Utes, the Arapaho people's history remembers traveling into Colorado from the northeast, and they resided in the high plains of Colorado and Wyoming, instead of the mountains like the Ute people. The Arapaho people were nomadic, lived in teepees, and would hunt big game such as buffalo. The Arapaho people had close ties and alliances with the Cheyenne people, who also lived in the general area. The Apache people lived in the southern portion of Colorado, but they were nomadic and could be found from high mountains to valleys, deserts, and high plains. They relied on buffalo for survival, and like other tribes, they split up in bands. The Shushan, or Shoshone people, could also be found in the far northwestern part of the state. One of the unique tribes that resided in the far southwestern corner of Colorado were the Anasazi, or Ancestral Pueblos. They have a long history in the region and are known for building cliff dwellings to live in, such as the ones found at Mesa Verde National Park. Other tribes had territory that sometimes extended into small portions of Colorado, such as the Comanche, Kiowa, and Navajo tribes. The first indigenous people to arrive, or non-indigenous people to arrive in Colorado, were the Spanish, who arrived as early as the late 1500s through expeditions, although there were only 12 recorded expeditions between 1593 and 1780. There isn't much information on these expeditions, as they lack documentation. The early Hispanic travelers traveled to the San Luis Valley from the area of Taos, New Mexico, and founded the oldest town in Colorado in 1851, San Luis. The Spanish arrival brought horses to various indigenous tribes, which was a game changer for the often nomadic people. These early settlers were typically ranchers, and although there was some trade between tribes, not everyone always got along. As European forces slowly encroached Colorado territory, they wanted land and prosperity, regardless if the land was occupied by indigenous peoples. Conflicts such as raids occurred, and after Spanish exploration in Colorado, France had claims to some of modern Colorado for a short period of time until the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Through the Louisiana Purchase, the eastern portion of Colorado belonged to the United States, and Mexico still claimed portions of the modern state as well. This created conflict in a war known as the Mexican-American War in the 1840s, which ended with Colorado belonging to the United States. The early Americans to enter Colorado were fur trappers who established trade posts, such as Bent's Old Fort. This trade was established along the Santa Fe Trail in 1833 and provided opportunity in the West through trade with indigenous people and other people in the West for 16 years. Colorado would see dramatic changes though after the first gold was found within the state boundaries in 1858 and the Colorado Gold Rush began. Swarms of people from the eastern portion of the United States flocked to Colorado looking for gold, but it was a very difficult and long journey to get there. This swarm of people coming to Colorado looking for gold created a lot of conflict with the tribes residing in the region. Just 6 years after gold had been discovered in Colorado, the infamous tragedy of the Sand Creek Massacre occurred in the eastern plains of Colorado. In 1864, 675 U.S. troops and volunteers murdered 230 Arapaho and Cheyenne people in a surprise attack, in which the majority were women, children, and elderly. Conflicts and treaties between the indigenous tribes and the U.S. shrunk native lands to small reservations, which decreased in size over time. For Americans, they may have overwhelmed the native people, but after the gold rush ended, and even throughout, there were hardships. Many people did not find the fortune they were looking for, and traded their established lives in the East for a very hard life of survival in Colorado. Mining was a very dangerous career, and miners worked very hard, as well as risked their health and lives to make a living. The deadliest mining accident occurred in 1917 and resulted in the death of 122 people, which was known as the Hastings Mine Explosion. There were many other mining accidents that occurred throughout Colorado, as well as strikes that were led by miners due to low pay, compared to the difficult work, long hours, and dangers of the job. One strike ended in a massacre known as the Ludlow Massacre. After striking, the National Guard and guards employed by the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company attacked a tent colony of around 1,200 people, killing 21 of them, including miners' wives and children. It was unfortunate that it took this massacre to create change, but it did influence action on child labor laws and an 8-hour workday. After the gold rush ended, although there were many hardships, various industries were able to find some success, such as coal mining, steel industries in areas such as Pueblo, and agriculture, to name a few. The addition of railroads in Colorado created many opportunities for people to travel to Colorado with ease, compared to by wagon. Although multiple companies had heated competition in the race to build the railroads in Colorado, and building the railroads in the mountain was a very difficult process. Aside from people being transported, materials and supplies could be transported, which supported industries. Over the years, Colorado has seen a lot of population growth. In 1870, the population was 39,864 people and grew to 541,483 in 1900 after the gold rush. Although the gold rush ended around this time, the population continued to grow and hasn't stopped, as it reached 1 million people by 1930, over 2 million by 1970, and over 4 million by the year 2000. Although there has been significant population growth, there was certainly setbacks and hardships for many people. An example of this was the Great Depression, which lasted from 1929 to 1941 and brought drought and an economic depression to Colorado and the country, affecting the many people involved in agriculture, other industries, and people's general survival. Racism and segregation existed in Colorado as well. The Ku Klux Klan existed in Colorado and discriminated against people who were black, and some African American people settled on Blake and Larimer streets in Denver, but were forced east because of discrimination and racism in the early 20th century. The town of Deerfield is a ghost town today, located around 70 miles northeast of Denver, but was the largest black homesteading settlement in Colorado, being established in 1910. Lincoln Hills, located near Nederland, Colorado, was a resort for African American people and served as a nice getaway for these people to get away from the racism in the cities and towns. Segregation didn't end with people who were African American, as there were blocks divided between different people, such as Little Italy, where the infamous Smaldone family resided, having ties to Al Capone and sold alcohol during the Prohibition era, as well as instilling a rise in gambling. During World War II, Japanese Americans were placed into internment camps in Colorado, such as in Granada. By the 1980s, over 3/5 of the Colorado's population had not been born in Colorado, and tourists became more attracted by the beauty of the state. National parks had been created, and activities such as skiing started to see a boom within the state. In modern times, areas boast many ski resorts and mountain towns that attract tourists from all over the world. Colorado, also known as Colorful Colorado or the Centennial State, for achieving statehood 100 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, has attracted many people over time for its beauty and diversity. From snow-capped mountains to mesas, grasslands, and desert basins, canyons and plateaus, Colorado has wonderful scenery and lifestyles for many people around the world to enjoy.